The UAP Herald, Case File 011, the green circle over Sary Shagan. I want to start with a man stepping outside for some air. It is a late summer evening in 1973. He is somewhere inside the vast, closed expanse of the Soviet Union's most secret weapons testing range, a place called Sary Shagan, out on the desert steppe west of Lake Balkhash. Inside, a television is playing a hockey game, Canada against the USSR. He has been watching, and now he walks out into the dark. And there, in the sky to the west, he sees something. A sharp, bright green circle. A mass of light hanging silent, about 70 degrees above the horizon, nearly overhead. He cannot tell how high it is. He cannot tell how big it is. And then, within 10 to 15 seconds, it begins to change. The circle widens. Concentric rings form around it, green on green, spreading outward like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. And then, within minutes, the color simply fades. No sound, no explosion, nothing. He goes back inside. The hockey game is still on, and he tells no one, or at least no one who started a rumor. This is the story of a single strange observation, buried inside a 3-page CIA intelligence report that was stamped, approved for release only in 2026. It is not an analysis. It is not a finished assessment. It is a raw field product, a message from the Directorate of Operations carrying a warning, sensitive intelligence sources and methods involved. And right on its cover, in capital letters, it tells you exactly what it is and what it is not.
This is an information report, not finally evaluated intelligence.
That is the honest frame, and it is printed on the page. What you are about to hear is a single human source's account, passed through a case officer, typed up and filed. It has never been corroborated by any other witness, any radar, any photograph. The source's name is redacted. His exact role is redacted. The document itself is missing pages. And the sighting it describes, a green, concentric, ringed object over a missile test range, remains, to this day, unexplained. But the report is real, the place is real, the missiles are real, and the man who saw it was real enough that the CIA put his words into a numbered intelligence report and distributed it to the State Department, the DIA, the NSA, the FBI, and half a dozen other agencies. So let's sit with what he said, and with what the record can and cannot tell us. Tonight, a real spy document from inside the Soviet Union's most secret weapons range. What it actually says, what we can prove, and what we very carefully will not. Start with the object itself, because on this channel, the document is the story. What we have is 3 pages, and the header at the top of each sheet tells you exactly what kind of paper this is. Directorate of Operations. That is the CIA's clandestine service, the people who run agents and debrief defectors. This is not a polished analytic product. It is raw reporting, written by a case officer based on what a human source told him. An intelligence information report. An IIRR is a brick, not a building. It is meant to be stacked with other bricks, checked, corroborated, or discarded. And right at the top, the report warns you it has not been through that process yet. The cover sheet reads like a fingerprint. Report number, Foxtrot, India Romeo Kilo, 311-01638. Country, USSR. Date of information, the window the source is describing. November 1972 to November 1973. And the subject line, in plain type.
The Sary Shagan weapons testing range.
Then a single field that tells you how this was gotten. Acquisition, Germany. And the source, described in 6 words, and only 6 because the rest of the line is blacked out.
A former Soviet citizen who served.
Served where, in what capacity, under whose recruitment, gone. This was a defector or an émigré, debriefed in the West, the kind of human source the Cold War ran on. Germany in the 1970s was a front line of that war, where defectors crossed and the CIA and the KGB played their endless game. The classification stamp runs across the top and bottom of every page.
Confidential. Warning notice. Sensitive intelligence sources and methods involved.
That warning is not about the green light. It is about the man. It tells anyone handling this document that the truly sensitive part is how the CIA got him, his identity, the circumstances of his debriefing. The light in the sky is interesting. The human being who described it is irreplaceable. And the classification block is unusual in one more way. It exempts the report from the automatic declassification schedule of Executive Order 11652, the order Richard Nixon signed in 1972 to put most secrets on a clock. This one was taken off the clock with a note that it was impossible to determine a date of automatic declassification. In plain English, this stays secret until someone actively decides otherwise, and it did for over 50 years. Now look at what is missing, because the holes are half the document. The pages we have are numbered. At the top, -4 and -5. Pages 1, 2, and 3 are simply not in the release. And on the pages we do have, the paragraph numbering tells its own story. It runs to 14, but whole stretches are a single black rectangle. What survives, in clear text, is the Warheads, a rumor about lasers, and a green light in the sky. Everything that would place the man precisely, gone. Down the side of the cover runs the distribution list, the alphabet soup of who got a copy. State, DIA, NSA, the FBI, NPI, C, the Photo Interpretation Center that would go hunting for these sites from orbit. This was not a curiosity filed and forgotten. It went to the whole national security apparatus. A green light does not earn that mailing list on its own. The missiles do. The light just came stapled to them. To read the green circle, you first have to understand where the man was standing. So, what is Sary Shagan? On the west bank of Lake Balkhash, in the desert of what is now Kazakhstan, the Soviet leadership authorized in 1956 an experimental facility for missile defense. Not offense, defense. The hardest problem of the nuclear age: how do you shoot down an incoming warhead, a target the size of a person falling out of space at 20 times the speed of sound? They built a proving ground, the length of a country, to try. And in 1961, at that range, the Soviets did something the United States would not manage for years. They intercepted a ballistic missile warhead in flight with a non-nuclear hit. The first time in history anyone had done it. Sary Shagan was where the Soviet Union learned to knock arrows out of the air. It stayed a closed city, sealed to outsiders, until 2005. And the report anchors our source inside it with the granular, boring, verifiable stuff real espionage is actually made of. It names his regional headquarters, a military unit he calls Vichy 0308080, and his own outfit, a warhead checkout unit, Vichy 03142. Those Vichy numbers are Soviet military postal codes, real administrative fingerprints, not the language of a man inventing a UFO story. What makes his debrief worth the CIA's ink is that the technical parts check out. He is not a farmer who saw a light. He is a man who handled the ordnance. Listen to the report's own words.
Besides the System 75 warheads, Site 4 also checked the warheads for a missile known as the System 300 and/or Alden. The System 300 Alden warheads, after being checked at Site 4, were taken to Site 35 for launching. According to rumor, the missile was for anti-missile defense.
Two weapons, named in the source's own shorthand, System 75 and System 300, or Alden. The case officer adds a translation in brackets, a field comment, and this is where the raw report earns its keep. Field comment. Source identified the System 300 Alden missile in available reference material as the ABM-1 Galosh. Those names are checkable against the open historical record. System 75 is the S-75 Divina. NATO called it the SA-2 guideline. It is not obscure. It is the most famous surface-to-air missile of the Cold War, the weapon that reached up over the Urals in 1960 and knocked Francis Gary Powers and his U-2 spy plane out of the sky. And the other one, the ABM-1 Galosh, is the crown jewel. Galosh is the Western name for the A-350, the tall exo-atmospheric interceptor of the A-35 system, the ring of anti-missile rockets built to defend Moscow itself. It was the one and only anti-ballistic missile system the Soviets were permitted to keep under the 1972 ABM Treaty. In other words, our source was handling the warheads for the missiles that guarded the Kremlin from nuclear attack. And he describes them with the specificity of a man who did the work. The System 75 warhead, about 100 grey cassettes, 30 by 7 centimeters, each holding 200 to 300 metal balls no bigger than 1.5 centimeters. That is a fragmentation warhead, designed to throw a wall of shrapnel into the path of an aircraft. Hundreds of little steel balls, a shotgun blast fired at the edge of space. This is not the vocabulary of a hoaxer. This is a technician emptying his memory onto a table in a safe house. He describes the Galosh warhead too, about 2 meters long, 80 to 100 centimeters across. There is one honest wrinkle, and we will not paper over it. The known Galosh carried a large nuclear warhead. Our source describes something more experimental, and the field comment records his own limit.
Field comment. Source had no knowledge regarding nuclear warheads. He stated all work done by his department was basically experimental.
Experimental, in his word, opitnaya. So either he worked a test variant or his identification was imperfect. The officer even notes the source could not say whether Alden and System 300 were the same missile or two cousins. We flag it, we do not resolve it, and we move on. Because it is exactly this texture, the technician who knows the bolt sizes but not the bomb, that tells you the green circle witness was a real, placed, credible human being. And notice what the document does right after the warheads. The paragraph numbering jumps a beat, and a whole paragraph vanishes into a blank rectangle. We do not know what was in it. The CIA has chosen not to tell us. Immediately after that missing paragraph, the report shifts to a different kind of information. It is one sentence long, it is labeled as hearsay, and it is the reason this case has teeth.
According to hearsay, experiments involving laser weapons were being conducted at an unknown location at the range. Supposedly, the tests involved powerful antennas. No further details.
Laser weapons, powerful antennas, at Sary Shagan. Now, here is where a lesser channel sprints straight to a death ray shooting down a UFO, and here is where we slow all the way down, because the truth is both real and more disciplined than the legend. Was there directed energy work at Sary Shagan? Yes. That part is not rumor, it is history. The range was the home of the Soviet Union's laser weapon program, the complex the West came to call Terror 3. Soviet work on laser weapons began in the mid-1960s, and construction of the beam site was underway around the time of the 1972 ABM Treaty, precisely the window our source is describing. A man on that range in 72 and 73, hearing that they were testing beam weapons with big antennas, was hearing something that lines up with the real program. That collocation, a genuine directed energy site and a genuine strange light, is the whole reason this document is more than a footnote. But now the cold water, because credibility is the only currency we have. The Terror 3 legend got enormous. The most famous story is that in 1984, the site's laser reached up and illuminated the Space Shuttle Challenger, jamming its instruments and rattling the crew.
That claim originated with former Soviet officials. The Challenger crew and knowledgeable members of the U.S. intelligence community denied that the shuttle was ever illuminated by the laser.
Denied by the people who were on board, treat the Challenger story as what it is, a disputed Cold War legend, not a fact. And the reality of the weapon was smaller still. When American experts were finally let onto the site in 1989, they found a system that had never come near operational, lasers orders of magnitude weaker than America's own. The Soviet death ray was, in the end, mostly a rumor with a construction budget, so hold both things at once. The range really was testing beams. And those beams could not have painted a growing green ring across the evening sky. The document, to its enormous credit, never claims they did. The laser rumor is one paragraph, the sighting is the next. And the reporting officer puts a blank line between them and draws no arrow from one to the other. We are going to honor that blank line, even though it is the most tempting thing in the file. So here it is. The last readable thing in the document before the page goes black. Read it slowly. The restraint in the language is the point.
On one evening in late summer 1973, source observed an unidentified phenomenon at Site 7. While watching a sport competition between Canada and the USSR on television, he stepped outside for some air and observed an unidentified, sharp, bright, green circular object or mass in the sky. The object was situated west of the site at an angle of sighting of approximately 70 degrees. The altitude of the object was undeterminable.
A man steps out of a room where a hockey game between Canada and the Soviet Union is on the television. He looks up and to the west, about 70 degrees off the horizon, high, nearly overhead, and he sees a sharp, bright green circle, not a saucer, not lights in formation, a circle, a mass. The officer's bracket tells you how carefully the man hedged.
Field comment. Although there were no clouds in the sky that evening, source believed that the green mass would have been higher than cloud level. Source could not estimate the diameter of the object.
He will not guess the size. He will not guess the height, except to say it was above where clouds would be. This is a man refusing to embellish. And then the thing does the one thing that makes this case memorable.
Within 10 to 15 seconds of observation, the green circle widened, and within a brief period of time, several green concentric circles formed around the mass. Within minutes, the coloring disappeared. There was no sound, such as an explosion, associated with the phenomenon.
The circle widens. Rings form around it, concentric, one inside the next, like ripples from a stone dropped in a pond, but in the sky and green. And then, over minutes, the color simply drains away. Silent. No boom, no rush of air, no light trail. Just an expanding green target that opened, bloomed into rings and faded. And the last bracket in the file is the most important sentence in it, because of what the witness refuses to do.
Field comment. Source had no opinion as to what this phenomenon was. There was no resultant rumors. Source could not provide any further details.
No opinion. He does not say spacecraft. He does not say weapon. He does not say ours or theirs. He describes a shape, a color, and a duration, and he stops. And nobody on the base, as far as he knew, ever talked about it again. That is the entire sighting. One man, one evening, one green circle that grew rings and went out. There is one thread that begs to be pulled, and honesty demands we admit where it snaps. He anchors the evening to a Canada versus USSR sport competition on television, the kind of detail a historian dreams of, because you could, in theory, look up the broadcast and fix the date. Except the famous Canada-Soviet hockey series were 1972 and 1974, not the summer of 73, so the anchor that looks like it should pin the date doesn't. We cannot tell you the night this happened. We can only tell you the document says late summer 73 and leave the whole honest and open. Now the skeptic's corner. And on this case, the skeptic is holding most of the cards. Because we have to ask the unglamorous question, what, that we already understand, expands into silent green concentric rings high in the evening sky and then fades. It turns out we have a very good answer, and you have probably seen it yourself in the last few years.
A rocket. Specifically, a rocket venting or dumping fuel at high altitude. When a stage releases unburned propellant into the near vacuum up there, it flash freezes into a cloud of tiny ice crystals, and those crystals catch sunlight the ground has already lost. If the stage is spinning, the cloud opens outward in rings or a spiral. It is enormous. It is eerie. It is completely silent, because it is happening tens of kilometers above you, and it fades as the geometry of the sunlight changes. Every few months, some version of this lights up social media as a UFO, and every few months, it turns out to be a rocket dumping fuel.
An expanding, silent, luminous ring that fades in minutes is, today, one of the most reliably identified things in the sky, and it is a rocket. Now remember two facts from earlier in this very document. Our source was standing on an active missile range. The report says warheads checked at Site 4 were taken to Site 35, quote, for launching. Things went up from Sary Shagan. A test launch, a booster venting, an intercept trial gone high and bright. Every one of those is a mundane local candidate sitting right there in the same 3 pages. And if you want the clincher, look at what else was happening in the Soviet Union in the very year this report was filed.
On the 20th of September 1977, people across the northwest of the Soviet Union, and as far away as Finland, watched an enormous glowing object hang over the city of Petrozavodsk, trailing shafts of light like a jellyfish. It became one of the most famous UFO events in Soviet history, and it has a well-supported explanation. That same morning, the USSR launched the Cosmos 955 satellite from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome. The rising rocket, its exhaust lit by a sun still below the horizon, produced the glowing, expanding, silent shape that terrified a nation.
Same country, same decade, a luminous, expanding, silent mass in the sky, and underneath it, a rocket. To be fair to the file, Petrozavodsk is a separate case. It is not in our CIA document, and we are not smuggling it in as if it were. We raise it because it is the pattern, the well-documented physics-first pattern, that any serious investigator has to lay over a green expanding ring before reaching for anything exotic. And the intelligence world knew this pattern cold. This is the same CIA whose own historian later admitted that more than half of the UFO reports of the late 50s and 60s were actually its own secret spy planes, catching the sun at altitudes the public did not know anything could reach. When the CIA files a strange light, its institutional reflex is not aliens. It is, what secret thing of ours, or theirs, did this person actually see? So weigh the green circle honestly. One witness. No second observer, no photograph, no instrument reading, no radar, no follow-up, no rumor, no confirmation. The man himself offered no opinion. On every scale we use on this channel, that is, weak evidence. The most likely explanations are entirely of this earth, and several of them are launching from the range he was standing on. That is the responsible read, and we are not going to flinch from it to keep the mystery warm. So let's put it on the record, in order, the way the file earns it.
1956. The Soviet Union authorizes the Sary Shagan missile defense range on Lake Balkhash. 1960. An SA-2 from that program downs Gary Powers's U-2. 1961. Sary Shagan achieves the world's first non-nuclear intercept of a ballistic missile warhead. 1972. The ABM Treaty. Construction of the range's laser site is underway. 1972-73. Our source serves on the range, handling System 75 and Galosh warheads. Late summer, 1973. One evening at Site 7, the Green Circle. 1977. The CIA distributes the report. That same autumn, the Petrozavodsk jellyfish lights up the Soviet sky over a rocket launch. 1989. U.S. inspectors find the Sary Shagan laser was never near operational. 2026. The Department of War releases the fullest version of the report yet.
So here is the honest ledger. What do we actually know? We know this is a genuine CIA intelligence report, distributed across the US government in 1977 and released in full in 2026. We know the source was a real, technically credible insider on the Soviet Union's most secret missile range. His warhead detail checks out against the open record. We know the range truly was a directed energy test site, and we know the dramatic laser legends attached to it were disputed and, on inspection, overblown. And we know that one evening in late summer 1973, that credible man saw a bright green circle grow concentric rings in silence and fade, and told the truth about how little he could say about it. What we do not know is what it was. We do not know the date, because the one clue points at the wrong year. We do not know whether anything went up from Site 35 that night. We cannot rule the mundane in, and we will not rule the mysterious out. And we do not know what sat under the censor's black rectangles. The operational context that might have explained everything, or nothing, still withheld half a century later. The green circle isn't proof of anything from anywhere else. It is a well-attested description of a well-known kind of sky event, seen by an honest witness who refused to overclaim, filed by an agency that refused to conclude, inside a document it stamped as not yet evaluated. Unresolved is not the same word as unexplained, and it is a very long way from confirmed. In the end, the most impressive thing in this file isn't the green circle. It's the discipline around it. A defector who wouldn't guess the size, a case officer who wrote hearsay down as hearsay and drew no arrow to the light, an agency that filed it as raw, unevaluated, and left the black boxes black. Everyone who touched this document told you exactly how much they didn't know. And if there is one thing I have learned from reading these documents, it is that the truth is often smaller than we want it to be. It is a man stepping outside for air, a light in the sky, a typewritten page, and a question that outlives the answer, a bright green ring over the Soviet Union's shield against the end of the world, real, recorded, and still, honestly, unresolved. Case File 011. The Green Circle over Sary Shagan. Every page read, every claim checked against the record. The UAP, Harold, declassified, investigated, filed, a Hive production.